Good morning and welcome to the Cocktail Crew, the show where we dive into the human mind, laugh about our own struggles, and basically realise we're not alone in everything we think and do. I'm Hazel, the consistency coach, and with me as always is Sam.
Sam. I preempted that one. I'm Sam, I'm the Cortex coach, and welcome to everybody listening. Hazel, do you get that feeling? Do you ever get that feeling that, you're making things up as you go along? And sooner or later, someone's going to realise you don't actually know what you're doing?
I always feel like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
definitely
always
do.
think that.
Yeah. And
And
even
it's a
though
shame
deep
because
down, we know we've put the work in.
Well,
But,
I've done the same job for 21 years, and yet I can still feel when somebody comes, because in teaching, they come to watch you, and you think,
yeah.
God, am I going to be good enough? And then I'm thinking, why should I be feeling like that?
Yeah.
I've done this all my life. But yeah, it does.
Is imposter syndrome, showing up uninvited. And guess what? Like you said at the beginning, you're not the only one dealing with it. I deal with it. I think I even drive you mad by saying it all the time.
Yeah, you do actually. Because I had never used that term before. I hadn't actually heard of it as imposter syndrome till a couple of months ago but it's the same thing where you think, should I be here? Should I be in this place? When really you know you're good enough, but for some reason you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible thing, but a lot of people do suffer with this all the time.
Yeah. So today, I think we're going to dive into this. Where does that doubt come from? How it keeps us stuck, because it does. And most importantly, how can we move past it and actually own the confidence that we all deserve? And before we go on any further, we also have got a special guest here with us today. Welcome.
Yes, we do.
Kate. Kate, if you'd like
Hi, Kate.
to give a brief introduction of yourself.
Well, yes, thanks very much for inviting me on to join today. Absolute pleasure to join the Cocktail Crew in recording this one. My name is Kate Manton. I am a growth coach, so I help teams unlock the disruptive power of team, and I help individuals unlock the power of their potential. And imposter syndrome is definitely something that people feel. It's something that I felt as well. So it's really, really relevant topic. So thanks for the invite to join you both.
Thanks, Kate.
No problem. It's great to have you.
It is, absolutely. And later on in this podcast, we'll be asking Kate some questions around imposter syndrome today. And later on, we've also got another recipe for you to help you beat imposter syndrome. So please stay tuned. Okay, so first of all, exploring the problem. Where does imposter syndrome come from? Why does it keep showing up? And why do so many of us experience it? And I've recently discovered, Kate and Hazel, before we move on, it was actually first identified by psychologists. They were called Suzanne Imes and Pauline Rose Clance, and it was discovered in the 1970s. Interestingly, it was used to describe professional women who lacked internal recognition for the accomplishments that they give it. Interesting, is it a male female thing? Probably not. Men probably experience it as well, but interesting how it was used to describe professional women.
Well, just to hint to that, I've been reading up on it, obviously, and it's not just your everyday person that experiences it. But I've got two male examples for you. Albert Einstein.
Okay.
That's a surprise.
He was filled with what he referred to as he saw himself as a fraud because he didn't deserve the recognition he felt. This was in his own mind, that he didn't deserve the recognition he got because he thought, they'd just be nice to me. But, so while we're worrying about doing a PowerPoint or something, thinking we're not good enough, this was the brightest man in the world. And yeah, he had that. And also, love him or hate him, Jimmy Carr sells tickets. And by the way, Jimmy, Love you.
You really do.
But he doesn't believe, he can't get his head around the fact that so many people turn up for his shows, and he thinks, I always go on think, I hope I'm funny enough, because do I deserve you all to be here? So when you've got these two people who are big names and seem like there's nothing can go wrong, but they're facing the same things, the same imposters. So it's not just women, it is men too.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And I think it's a psychological phenomenon, isn't it? It's where individuals persistently feel like they're a fraud. It's that nagging doubt that you're not as competent or as talented or as accomplished as people probably think you are. Even when there's clear evidence that you've earned success. And I think an example for me, in a previous life, I used to be a store manager, a retail store manager. And I can remember one year in this particular store I was in, my store won every award going. For example, top sales for the district, top sales for the region, top average sale, top items per customer, top add-ons, literally everything. To the point in the awards, when we used to go to the conferences for awards, my line manager was asked if I could forego one of the awards because so I didn't win everything, which she agreed because like with the add-ons, it was the same percentage, but mine was slightly better as long as I got a mention. And people would say to me afterwards, "Oh no, you did really well." I'm like, "Well, any manager in that store would have done the same. I didn't see it as my accomplishment,
Yeah.
And I always say, "Oh no, you've done really well. You've done this, that, and the other." I'm like, "Oh yeah, just pot luck. Right place, right time."
So Sam, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
We've identified, Sam and I, 5 different types of imposter syndrome. You can be the perfectionist, the expert, the natural genius, Kate, the soloist, and the super person. Which one, Sam, are you?
Probably the perfectionist.
Having known you quite a while, I would say you're probably right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have any other friends that show me how tidy their drawer in their unit is where they sit down to do work. So yeah, and sends me photos of things like that. So yeah, I would say the perfectionist.
Yeah, it's very tidy, very structured, but then that follows through with everything. I mean, you know me, I have and I'm very old school. I have a diary and I have to write it in, and I have to tick off when I've
Oh,
completed
that's me
the
as
task.
well. Yeah.
Yep.
So I have that. Yes, and even my notebooks. And you've took a hint from this, haven't you? If
I have actually.
I've got an A4 notebook that I use for my day job, and I write the title at the top, what I'm talking about, the date, who I'm talking to, and list it all. And every page is a new page for each one of those. So it's very structured.
I have. I've taken a leaf out of that book, so to say. And viewers, if you're watching, stay away from Sam on a night out because she is wild.
Each to their own.
I've probably got my stationery with me. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So okay. Going back to ignoring me. Going back to imposter syndrome. Where does it come from? And I think I've mentioned this previously about, is imposter syndrome often rooted in past conditioning? And I mean that not only by us, is it because I've said before, a lot of our traits come from our ancestry, so our parents, grandparents, their grandparents, and it's all sort of learnt traits, isn't it? Do you think imposter syndrome's the same?
B. Obviously you get a lot of it is learned behaviour. But I was also thinking about it in a different way, Sam, because it's sometimes a good thing to have that feeling of imposters because it makes you more prepared. It's not necessarily negative all the time. It means that you want to show up and do what you're supposed to do. So you'll work that little bit extra. I don't always see it as being totally negative. But I do think it probably, my mum was very particular in everything, how she did her writing, her kitchen, everything. I'm very much like that as well. And my dad's very organised and straightforward. So yeah, you do pick up some of that. I think the doubts are just from, I always lack confidence. Now, nobody can really help me with that. Well, could have at the time. But I was able to do things, but I just never thought I was good enough. But then you do get better as you get older and you realise you've got more experience but I think I'll always have that little bit saying, am I good enough for this? But that will make me work a bit more just to, when I have to do a presentation or something, just to make sure I'm as prepared as I can be.
Definitely a confidence thing, isn't it? And also, you know, the high, like we've mentioned perfectionism, that's an issue, high expectations from, you know, society and peers. Social media, maybe that's sort of not helped the cause as well, because it's that comparison culture, isn't it? You're constantly comparing it to someone, that's just a snapshot of their life. Doesn't necessarily mean that's a true account of their life, but you're then comparing yourselves to them. And I think, you know, people in social media and famous people out there in the real world, and I think we're going to do an episode on this later, don't meet your heroes, because you know, your heroes, you only see a snapshot of those as well. You don't see the real person behind that, do you?
And it's not even a real snapshot, is it? It's filtered out. And I wish I could say this to children, especially teenagers, girls especially, who do compare themselves to people they see on Instagram and whatever they're looking at, but don't, because you're not seeing real life. It's only a picture, but it can influence how they think they should be thin enough, how they should be. But you're seeing an AI picture of somebody. It's not the real thing. And it's a shame, but it has a lot of influence on people.
Yeah. Yeah, and also you don't see the hard work and years of work they put into getting to where they are either, do you?
Well, Jimmy Carr didn't just stand up on stage and come out with those jokes. Taylor Swift didn't just turn up and make $1 million a night, because she'd been doing this since she was 10 to get to this state. But you only see the glamorous side of it, the bit where they're rich, they're famous, but you don't see what graft they've had to go through to get to that point in the first place. So it's all false, but it does have an impact on people.
Yeah, definitely. And we've already mentioned perfectionism, so you know, the belief that anything less than flawless is failure, and that's definitely the case with me. And you do lead to overworking, procrastination, which we covered in our previous podcast, and avoidance to do the task because you're fearing you're not good enough, and it keeps you stuck and it keeps you from moving forward. Setting unrealistic high standards and then feeling inadequate when you fall short, because you're going to fall short from those high standards generally. You know, don't punish yourself. You know, just
I think it's a case for reframing, which we can do later on, because when you're feeling this, you could say, well, I didn't do that perfectly, but do you know what? I've learned from it. Rather than say, well, I didn't do that perfectly, I'm giving up now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that again. Well, maybe have a look at it and say, well, I managed this bit. Let's see what I can do. It's a case of reframing, I think, and we can go into that in another day, but I'll let you get to Kate because I'm talking too much.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we've talked about the comparison trap that we often fall into, certainly with social media. Fear of exposure, well, you know, and that's a deep rooted cause of imposter syndrome, isn't it? It's like the fear of exposure. You know, I'm not as good as people probably think they are, and they're going to find me out, sort of thing. So yes, Kate, we have our lovely Kate here in our studio today, and I've got some questions for you, Kate. If you're happy to answer these questions for us.
Absolutely, it'll be a pleasure.
Brilliant. Okay, so it'd be great to see your perspective of things in terms of imposter syndrome and see if it's similar to what myself and Hazel have been discussing right now. So, first question, Kate. When did you first recognise imposter syndrome in yourself, and how has it affected your confidence and your career to date?
So it's really interesting because I think I felt it and I recognized it, but I didn't label it imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
Right. So,
Yeah.
you mentioned just now that imposter syndrome, the phrase was first coined in the 1970s. It was, I don't want to give away my age now, but let's just say it was a long time ago. I was in a particular department and I'd had a couple of promotions, and each one comes with a healthy bout of nerves because, to your point, Hazel, you want to do well, you're proud, you want to be able to prove to everyone this is why I got this job. So they all come with a healthy bout of nerves, which is good because you have to have that. But then there was one job I got where I was a manager in a group of other managers, so a peer group of managers. And then I was promoted to director to lead that team. So I was then leading a team of people that previously I was a peer with and friends with as well. And it was a really interesting time for me. And in hindsight now, I recognize that what I was feeling was imposter syndrome, although at the time I wouldn't have labeled it that.
Yeah, same.
But it was interesting because those people that I started managing that became my team, they were very supportive. They were very encouraging. They never gave me any reason to go, all right, I haven't got their support in this. But in my head, I was, can I do this? Should I do this? I present as quite a confident person a lot of the time, but I was flipping between, I can do this, I've got this, and oh my gosh, why have I got this role? Are people going to go, why Kate? Why does she deserve it? Are people going to be kind of meeting in groups and all having a laugh behind my back and going, why's Kate got this job? Are they going to go, well, we've worked with her and we know what she can do and we know what she can't do. And it can become really crippling in your head. And so, and as I look back now, and it feels like it was a couple of weeks, it could have even been longer. It felt like after I first got the role and it was announced, I was tiptoeing around it, right? I was kind of tiptoeing
Oh, yeah.
in that space of director as this team. And it was quite a big team. There were about 30, 40 people in it, and it was director of a European team. So I had people across different countries and different cultures, but I was really tiptoeing around it in hindsight. It was a very high functioning team. They really were very good. And so they could almost run on their own, which I think to me was like, okay, well, I can actually just sit back a little bit. I don't need to make my mark. I don't need to put my hand up and go, hey folks, I'm now leading this team, because the team were functioning on their own, until I got to a point where I kind of realized, you feel imposter syndrome, but then if you don't do anything, it can then become that you are actually an imposter in the role because you're not doing the role that you're meant to be doing, if
It's
that makes sense,
interesting.
right?
Yes,
So it
yes.
becomes a little kind of self-fulfilling. And whilst the team was they were functioning, they were doing well, I was managing the team, and I needed to really step up and start managing the team, and bring what it was that I could, and the reason why I'd been made the director of that particular team. And so I really had to change my mindset, and I really had to pause and start thinking about, what is it that I am bringing to this role, and just get on with it.
That's the reframing, Kate, isn't it? That I was talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's recognizing it first.
Mm.
And, yes, when you get a particular role, and I recognize that imposter syndrome isn't just in a career, it can be in any group or community, right? It can be friends, family, sports teams, networks, any kind of community. I'm thinking about it from a career perspective. But yeah, you have to reframe it, and you have to kind of look at, why am I here? And then what are the things that I'm going to do to get out of that mindset and continue to learn and demonstrate why you're in the role that you're in.
If you don't mind me jumping in quickly, just with what you said, it doesn't just have to be about your career. I read about a girl who was invited to a wedding and a couple of other parties, and she said she always, when she was invited and got there, she would always take the role of somebody who worked there. She says, so at the wedding, she would be picking everybody's plates up and everything. She says, because she didn't feel worthy of being there, and she thought they'd kick her out.
Not interesting.
Yeah. And so, and at a party, she said, I'd go into automatic host mode, even though it wasn't my party, just because she didn't feel that she belonged there. And so she would try and do things to not make her stand out in other ways.
And I
So
think those two words, Hazel, are absolutely the right words: worthy and belong.
yeah,
People, do they feel like they belong in the group that they're in, and do they feel like they're worthy of being in that in that group with those people? It's really interesting. Really interesting.
Absolutely. I agree with that, because I recently did a course and I didn't feel I was worthy until the end. It was only at the end I thought, actually, yeah, I do belong here. But it
good.
took a while. And also interesting what you said as well, Kate, that you didn't recognise it as imposter syndrome. And I mean, Hazel have had conversations about this, and I'm always calling it imposter syndrome. I'm always saying it, but hey, Hazel, you don't, do you? It's the self doubt you see, and you don't see it as imposter syndrome, which
Yeah,
which
it wasn't a term I'd ever used myself. It was more, it was a lack of confidence for me. And that's what was causing me issues. I didn't recognise it as that term. I understand the term now. I don't know if I'm quite comfortable with that term. Imposter to me sounds like it's a deliberate thing, whereas I had self-doubt. I have self-doubt, but anyway, it all comes down to the same thing. But yeah, you're right. I didn't see it as that until we started talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. Kate, in terms of imposter syndrome, what are your triggers, and how do you overcome them?
So, it's interesting because as I was, getting ready to come onto the podcast, I had a moment where I recognized in myself, now I have imposter syndrome, right? And I was thinking
Yeah.
to myself, oh gosh, I'm going on this podcast to talk with the consistency coach and the cortex coach about imposter syndrome. Who am I to do that? Who am I to be a guest on a podcast? And then I kind of went, hang on a second. I've had 20 years of, working. I've had 20 years of feeling at times like, an imposter and, having imposter syndrome. 20 years of coaching people kind of in my team or peers or friends as to how to overcome it. So why should I not be here? And it's really interesting. The triggers can be all and everywhere.
Yeah.
So it can be, for me, when I think back, it's when I've had new roles, when I've been given new accountabilities or promotions, sometimes when I've had recognition for stuff as well, I kind of go, wow, did I do that? No, but I had all of these people that were also doing it. So I'm not sure that necessarily is imposter syndrome. I think, it takes teams of people to do things that, that are successful and, and are recognized. But it would be things such as new roles, accountabilities, responsibilities, when there's been transformations, when there's been, changes in kind of hierarchies or org structures, and you end up with, sitting somewhere different on the org chart. It can be things such as my own expectations of myself. I very much feel, and I've always felt, oh, I've been given a new role or a new accountability. I've got to prove myself immediately. So you put
Yeah.
that pressure on yourself as well, right? Like I've got to be perfect in this. I've got to show people why I'm the
Yeah.
person that is in that particular role. Constant comparison to others. You mentioned social media earlier, Sam, and I think that's really interesting because you know what people present publicly is very often the result of a lot of hard work, a lot of nerves themselves, a lot of this feeling of lack of confidence, maybe feeling, imposter syndrome, as we defined it, as not feeling like you belong or worthy. And I think social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all of that, I think that can really force that feeling of, comparison and that kind of maybe lack of being able to stack up. I think what was interesting for me as well is in a number of roles and teams that I've been in, I've been one of the youngest in the team. And I
Okay.
think that also kind of makes you go, do I belong here? Like, there's people
Yeah.
here that have got 10, 20, 30 years of experience in this particular area. And you have to start somewhere. And in a couple of instances, I was the youngest. And so I'd often feel, oh, should I be here? Is this the right room? Is this the right, group for me to be sitting with, engaging with? And then the biggest, though, I think, is just fear of failure, you
Yeah.
know. And for me, I've had to really figure out that, that fail forward, fail fast continue. It's all part of the learning process. So those are some of the triggers that I recognize in myself make me have that kind of wobble of imposter syndrome. And then in terms of some of the things I do to overcome it, I think first of all, it's normalizing the conversation. So I remember I had a role once, and the man, the leader of the team, and it was a very, very big team. He said to me, he came up to me after I'd been given this job in his team rather, and he said, "You're probably wondering why you're here. You're probably wondering, do you belong? You're probably a bit nervous." And I thought, wow, like he's normalizing those feelings for me and making me realize it's okay to feel like, and that was a big part of me then kind of calming down and going, it's okay for me to feel like this. I've got to get a handle on what I'm going to do about it, but it's okay for me to feel like that. And then you kind of, you go easier on yourself a little bit, right? And you have a little bit more self-compassion when you realize that other people feel it too. I think one of the things for me was taking actions as well, those mini steps. I have a coach who said something again to me just a couple of weeks ago, and it's short, but I find it very empowering. Version 1 is better than version none. Like if you don't start, if you don't do something, nothing
That's
will be
good.
done. And I loved it. Version 1 is
I
better than
love that.
version none.
Yeah, I'm writing that
Really
down.
good.
So it's taking those little actions, because the more actions you take, the more your confidence builds, the more you start going, yeah, I can be here. It is okay for me to be here. And then changing that reframe that you mentioned before around, I'm not good enough to, I'm learning and I will get there and I'm developing and I will be good
Yeah.
enough, because it is a journey, right? The first time we all do something is the worst time we do it. The first time you do it, so yeah, I've just shared a lot there, Sam and Hazel, but that's a number of kind of situations and how I sometimes manage those triggers.
Could I
No,
just
that's
mention
great.
something quickly, Sam, that's just come to mind? I was in Boots the opticians the other day, and I was getting these contact lenses and everything sorted. And it was a young girl, and she had to tell me, she says, "I'm really sorry, but I've just qualified." She says, and she says, "Do you mind if I do this? But I have to tell you because I'm brand new." And I said to her, I said, "Well, to be fair, you know more about the up-to-date stuff than anybody else." And she sat back and smiled, and I don't think she'd seen it that way. She was nervous about telling people she was new, and I'm thinking, no, this is great.
Yeah.
You are more. And it's just, again, it's all about changing that in your head, that voice that, I don't like the word liar, but that voice in your head is a liar. It's not telling you the truth. It's giving you these self-doubts and everything, but it's also, like you said, Kate, it just makes you just do that wee bit extra and gets you there. But yeah, I thought the girl in Boots, I could see she was nervous and everything, and no, I was more than overjoyed to have somebody with the up-to-date knowledge when it comes to your eyes.
But it's interesting, right, Hazel, because after she had served you,
Yeah.
she's taken that first action and her confidence will have increased a little bit.
I
When she
saw the
takes the
difference
next
in it,
action, she takes the next action of serving somebody else, her confidence increases a little bit. Before you know it, she's going to start, standing up straight, shoulders back, feet planted, going,
Yeah.
I belong here. I can do this. I should be here. I've got the qualification and I'm doing what I need to do. And it's taking those actions one at a time.
And by the way, she was very, very good. Couldn't fault her.
And there's a phrase that, excuse me, there's a phrase that I really like as well. I've heard it recently. That's done is better than perfect. You've took that step. You've done it. Like the assistant did that. You did that in your new role. And I think new roles are really difficult. And I think from my experience, a new role, I remember being promoted to area manager. And I remember before I started that role, I'm like, how am I going to manage managers? I've not done it before. So again, it's you've achieved that role. You've earned it. You've been put into that position because other people believe you. But then there's how can I manage managers? I've never done that before. But I think at the level you get to, enables you to be able to do that. It's just believe in yourself. And like you said, done is better than perfect. And you build on
Yeah.
that, don't you?
Yeah.
I just want to apologise for turning away. My little dog's sitting beside me. She's not very well and she was making
Oh.
whining noises. That's the only reason I've been turning looking at her,
Bless her.
just to see her. Yeah.
you
Anyway,
know-
sorry about that.
There's one thing as well, if Sam and Hazel, if you don't mind me adding, especially when we think about careers and jobs, right? We very often get promoted or get given responsibilities when we are already demonstrating those behaviors and showing the type of discipline, the type of, skills, the type of experience, that will enable the job to be done. But I think what happens is you then get kind of a label, or it becomes made official, and then you go, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
am I the right person for this? But actually,
Yeah.
very often, most of the experience that I've had, or that, when I've been working with teams and promoted people or asked them to do, different types of tasks, or, take on, projects, is because
Yeah.
they're already proving themselves. They're already showing that they're
Yeah.
demonstrating those behaviors. They've got the experience and the skill. So it's almost just putting a label on it. But it's incredible what that label, or that kind of formal,
Yeah.
ask, or that formal change can do to our own kind of, self-esteem, and thinking, yeah, we can actually do it.
Yeah.
But you've got to
That's a good
prove yourself
point.
before you get
Yeah.
those roles, right? It's interesting.
It really is, definitely. So, how do you balance the humility and confidence? How do you balance that to ensure that imposter thoughts don't hold you back?
So if I think about that balance of humility and confidence, for me, when it's done,
Yeah.
and it's never done perfectly, certainly not by myself, but when it's done, and it's done in a very open, transparent way, that is, for me, authentic leadership. That is when someone is being truly authentic, when they
Yeah.
have the humility to keep grounded, to be curious, to say, I don't have all the questions or the answers. I have all the questions. I don't have all the answers. To want to keep learning, balanced with the confidence of having that trust in yourself that you'll get there, but also having that trust in yourself to say, I know what I'm good at. And so I'm going to, play on my strengths. I'm going to do what I know I can do well, whilst I continue to learn and find that balance. So for me, it really is a big part of being authentic as a leader and as a coach as well. So it's knowing
Yeah.
what I need to do, knowing who I need to go to ask questions, to get support from. It's learning from others, but not hiding my own strengths. I think a part of it is around, being really clear as well on what your own strengths and development areas are.
Yeah.
Really, and being open and transparent with people. I think if I think back to that first time that I can really remember feeling imposter syndrome, and I'm sure I will have felt it in other guises before then, but I can really remember it. I think one of the changing points for me was I had a leadership team in Oxford, and all the managers all came in, and I'd spoken to all of them individually, and this was probably about a month or 6 weeks in. And I just said, hey, listen, this is new to all of us. It's different, having someone who was previously a peer now managing you, someone who was a friend now managing you, and, working on kind of performance reviews with you, and, having one-to-ones with you. So it was really about being authentic, and just
Yeah.
saying this, this is how I'm feeling. How are you feeling as well? And I recognize everybody's situation is different, but for me, that was a real turning point in going, you know what, yeah, I am the right person for this. And it
Yeah.
was those kind of conversations that helped me get there.
No,
And
that's
more
a
often than
good.
not, having someone they know put into that role is a lot easier than having an external body come in that you have to get to know. You have to get to know their quirks and how they work, and how they manage. They knew you. They knew how you did things, and they probably knew that you would see it from their perspective as well, because you've been there, and
Mhm.
that makes the whole bit of difference, doesn't it? Really,
I would
because
say, Kate, you must have had an amazing team though, because it can go the opposite way when you're promoted over people that you work with that have been through that, and there becomes a jealousy. Why you? But if you've got a good group of people, Kate, then I agree with Sam, because then it makes it easier. You all know how to work together anyway, and I can see that being a good thing.
And it's actually happened a couple of times where that's that situation where I've then become the leader of a team that previously I was part of. And that first one really kind of helped me get in my head, whilst it's not a perfect blueprint, the blueprint for, that transparency, authenticity, people know what you're good at. They also know where, your strengths don't lie and where they need to support you. But, they've got to trust in you as a leader to be really comfortable with that as well, and to be want to support you. And so I've been very fortunate in that respect. And then there's other times of my life where I've taken on like very big teams. At one point, a team I had was about 1,500 people large, and I had to really kind of have a good chat with myself as to, right, and I know we may get onto it in a second around kind of what are the things that you do then to really manage that. But I really had to kind of take a step back and go, right, I've got to look at this bank of evidence, right? Why am I in this role? Why has somebody asked me to do it? And there's a multitude of different things, but I think one of the things is really understanding that and going back and looking at that bank of evidence, looking at what is it that I've, achieved? What are the, what is it that I've what is it that's gotten me to this point? When someone put me in a role, what did they tell me the reason was for? Was it because of communication or people management or operations or whatever it might have been? So that bank of evidence to kind of go, there's a reason I'm here, and I've been practicing it, and I'm now put officially in the role, and then I've got to figure out then how I continue to balance that authenticity and humility with learning to be able to do the job that I've been put into, but to enjoy it and to have that confidence that I can do it.
Yeah. And just to touch on what you said as well, it's really important to surround yourself with people that believe in you and are going to uplift you and not pull you down, because that really helps.
Can I throw a random comment in here?
Go on.
Right. Obviously, when I was working in the Middle East, my fiance was a marine engineer, and there was an old captain of he was from Whitley, from one of the boats, and the guys had said to him one day, you know nothing about what you're doing. How are you the captain? He goes, yes, I know nothing about what I'm doing. Therefore, I surround myself with people who do. So he could manage. He didn't need to know the ins and outs. He could manage the team. But he did not have imposter syndrome.
No.
That's so interesting, Hazel. It is that it's surrounding yourself with almost like what I call your trusted advisors.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
He was just there to manage them all and make sure they behaved, but he didn't need to know.
Absolutely. And it could be people that you actually manage within a team or stakeholders, but you also need that one or those one or two people that will remind you of why you're there, but will also keep you balanced to make sure that balance between the authenticity and the humility stays intact, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, whether it's coaches, mentors, your workplace buddy, as it were, whether it's, somebody who is familiar with what you do kind of in your, personal life, whether it's a partner or somebody, that trusted advisor to help, reinforce to you, this is what you've done, this is why you're here, but also keep that balance so that you remain humble in what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, Kate. I fully agree with that. Yeah.
I was always told, because I come from many years in retail, always employ people better than yourself.
Yeah, surround yourself with people that lift you up.
You.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Never heard that.
You know, yeah.
No.
I was told all the time. Yeah.
Oh, they make you look good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll look that one up.
That's probably a question for another day. Kate, what advice would you give to someone who's battling imposter syndrome right now, especially when they feel like they don't belong?
First of all, I think there's like a physiological part to it, right? In terms of kind of, breathing calmly, shoulders back, Superman stance, I can do this, because that actually I find really quite empowering. But I think for me, it's they're not alone.
Yeah.
Like, whatever it is that they're feeling, they're not alone. You don't have to be fearless going into this, whatever the situation may be. You just need to show up each day, and that feeling will start to abate, and and you'll start going, actually, I am worthy. I do deserve to belong here. I do belong here, rather. You're already proving yourself in some way, shape, or form, like I mentioned before, whether you're displaying certain behaviors, whether you're demonstrating certain experience, skill set, whatever that might be. You've already made an impact before you've been given the title that you've got, or before you've been given the name or the job.
Yeah.
You're already doing it. You're already proving yourself. Keep coming back to the evidence. Like, I kind of call it an evidence bank. And I had a coach once, and at the time I thought, I'm not really sure if that's going to work, but it was gold. She said, get a jar or, any type of container, and just spend some time on post-it notes, sticky notes,
Yeah.
whatever, just writing down, what you've been successful at, or, feedback you've had, or compliments you've had, whatever it might be. Roll it up and throw it in that container. You don't have to go back and look at it. If you want to, you can, but it's a visual reminder that there's a reason why you are doing what you're doing, because you have had successes, you have had positive feedback, you have had compliments as to what it is that you're doing, and to lead you to where you are now. I'd say don't compare yourself to others, and I'm terrible for it, but do not compare yourself to others. Everybody is on their own path. Everybody is on their own, whether it's, development, gaps, whatever you want to call it. Everyone has got their own. And comparing yourself to others is just, it's not going to help at all. You are not going to be able to do the job or the role that you want to do exactly the same as anybody else. And no one else is going to be able to do it exactly the same as you. You are authentic, and what you bring to a role is authenticity and difference. And I would also kind of come back to that whole take action. Don't kind of tiptoe around what you're meant to be doing. Take small steps, because those small steps build confidence, and it comes back to version 1 is better than version none.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right, girls, another random tip for you now before we. Barack Obama actually does this. But I was taught this about 20 years ago by a friend who, I think she was a therapist and hypnotist. But when you want to feel, if you say, Kate, did you at some point say you had 1,400 people or something? Say you had to go and speak to those people. Now tell me if you've heard this. Have you heard of the circle power? You know it, Kate, don't you?
I've heard of it, yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. Sam, have you heard of it?
Don't think so.
Right, what you do first, before you can use it, you stare at the ground and imagine a circle, and it'll come to you in a colour.
Okay.
It could be yellow, grey, whatever. But Barack Obama does this, and if you watch him, before he ever gets up to do a speech, he'll look at the floor, he'll raise his head, and he'll take a big step into that invisible circle. And that's a circle of empowerment that makes you feel, and it really does actually
Just writing that down.
works. Yeah, but honestly, because when I had to first start doing speeches to parents and that at school, and I was a wreck, nervous, but I got taught this, and once you step into that circle, you become a completely different person. So yeah, definitely look it up, people, if you want to say something to your hairdresser about your fringe that you don't like, but you've not been brave enough to step into that circle. Something like that.
That's a really good practical tip to use.
It's really easy, and you can do it anywhere. Yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of moving on swiftly, in terms of practical tips, and that's certainly one I'm going to look up, because I'm, you know me in public speaking don't go eye to eye, so I think that's a really good tool to
it's really useful. Really useful.
Yeah. Other tips, obviously recognise imposter thoughts, challenge that voice that comes to you that says you're not good enough. Challenge that every day. Don't let those self-doubts eat away at you, because they become much bigger. Celebrate your accomplishments. And like Kate said, with her jar, Keep a list of those wins, however big or
I like
small.
that. Yeah,
It reinforces proof of success, doesn't it? You know, use a journal to document your evidence. So, on
my
those
favourite
days
thing. Yeah,
or moments of self-doubt, you can well, actually, here's my journal, and it's there in black and white. You can't deny that, can you? Detach from perfectionism. Like we said, done is better than perfect, and it's more
yeah,
about the progression that matters. Progression matters more than flawlessness. That's really important
absolutely.
to know.
Totally agree.
Kate, no, Hazel, you say this quite a lot about reframing. Reframe that fear. Doubt is normal. I think Kate's, demonstrated today with, in her career, the doubt.
Yeah,
But that doesn't define your abilities either. Just because you've got
no,
doubt doesn't mean you can't do what people believe
no.
you can do.
I've done a lot of
Um,
research on it, Sam, because it was something I really had to train myself to do, was reframe how I was thinking and
yeah,
make it more positive. So it's worth looking into that if you are
yeah,
that way, yeah,
definitely.
inclined. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think,
And challenge the
Sam, do you mind if I
narrative.
add one thing there? Sorry.
Yeah,
Do you mind if
absolutely.
I add one thing? I think, Barack Obama, look at what Barack Obama has done, right? And what he's
Yeah,
achieved in his life. If he has moments of doubt and moments of, gosh, how am I going to get through this next speech? And he is, stepping into that circle. Everybody does. Everybody has that feeling. When you're standing up, I say anybody is standing up and presenting to 5 people, 15 people, 1,500 people, you're the one that's doing it. They're not doing it.
Yeah,
You're the one
exactly.
that is saying, I'm standing up here, and by standing up here, I'm continuing to learn, I'm continuing to develop
Mm.
myself, I'm taking those actions, I'm feeling the fear. And somebody once said to me, run towards the fear in your career. And I thought that was brilliant.
wow.
Oh, writing that down as well.
Run towards the fear in your career, right? Because you just continue to improve. And those things, that one thing that you might go, why am I here? I'm not worthy of being here. I don't belong. That one thing could be the door to opening up a whole heap of other opportunities for you.
Yeah,
And then what's the worst thing that can happen? And I've spoken to you previously both about this.
right.
Ridiculously, didn't ever want to post on LinkedIn.
I know.
Look at ridiculously, right? To the point where it probably stopped me doing it for like a couple of months. And then I did it. And what happened afterwards? Well, I didn't go up in flames. I'm still here. I'm on a podcast with you two and really enjoying it. What happened? Nothing. And as I've been posting, I've been becoming more confident. It's not to say the quality of my posts are there, but becoming more confident, right? I'm feeling less of that kind of imposter syndrome that I had.
Yeah,
It's quite a powerful thing, just taking that step, just doing that step anyway.
And Kate,
yeah.
Sam, I don't know if I've ever told you this. I was in a coaching session on the course with Kate and Katie, and I didn't want to do it. I was just, I can't. And they both convinced me. So they both, I think it was you, Kate, that said, you're going to regret this if you don't do it. I can't remember which technique it was, and I did, and I felt so good for it. But I don't think I'd be sitting here now, Kate, if I hadn't gone ahead and taken that I was just, I can't do this. I can't. And I don't know why, because it was okay.
It was. And opportunities have opened up, right? And new
Yeah,
experiences have opened up. But I recognize it's not quite as easy as saying just do it. There's a
yeah,
big piece around, that bank of evidence and, that feeling of worthiness and belonging and, really normalizing it and identifying it. But, everything opens up if we can just balance that, continuing to learn and reframing it as I'm going to continue to get better from this experience.
yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
interesting you said that, Hazel, because confidence isn't about proving yourself, is it? It's about owning your own worth. That's what it's about ultimately. And I think that moves us nicely onto
I
our
know what you're going to
next
say.
thing, our cocktail.
Hey.
It's time to cleanse those self-doubts. And we've got an imposter detox cocktail that we
Brilliant.
want to share with you.
You definitely want to get stuck into this.
Oh, absolutely. So ingredients. 1 shot of self-recognition. So you really need to acknowledge your wins, acknowledge your own skills and efforts without diminishing them. You know, you are worthy.
And you need a squeeze of perspective shift. So again, reframing. What would you, if one of your friends was talking to you and saying this about themselves, what would you say to them? It's easy to tell others. Now you have to try and tell yourself the same thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I think next we'll put in 2 dashes of action taken. You know, we've talked a lot about confidence. Confidence comes from doing, not just thinking about it. You know, we're all guilty of that. You know, and those small steps we take lead to big shifts in the end.
And I've got the next one. You're going to laugh because I won't be able to say it properly with my accent. A swirl of community support. I don't know how you
Love
would
that.
say
Really well. You did good.
a swirl. Surround yourself with the voices that uplift you rather than people who are going to bring you down. So, bonds will understand. Swirl, swirl.
And then let's finish that off with a garnish of self-compassion. You know, perfection isn't required. We've said that along the podcast. And progress beats paralysis every time. You know, it's so important. And I think if we stick all those ingredients into a shaker, shake it up, pour it all into a glass, and sip continuously. You know, this is a path, isn't it? It's a path to where you want to go, where you're heading, and to improve that confidence and diminish that self-doubt and that imposter syndrome.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And Kate, thank you so much for joining us today. That was really interesting, really informative. We'll have to have you back. If that's okay, just keep your diary open. And next week we are doing Mind Monkeys, something quite interesting. It involves Ronnie O'Sullivan, I think. But that's just me.
Yep.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me both. This is great.
Absolutely fantastic to have you on, Kate. Thank you for that. So
thanks to everyone who is really joining us as we go viral.
Absolutely, yes. But if you want to check us out, you know, my website address is thecortexcoach.co.uk.
Can we give an email out, Sam? What's your email, just in case anyone wants the recipe or wants to get in touch?
Similar, sjc@thecortexcoach.co.uk.
Yeah, we'll get that. We'll eventually get round to getting that up on screen. We're just working on the technology at the minute, but anyway, thanks, ladies. I will leave you to go get a cup of tea and speak soon.
Have a great day.
Thanks both.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.